Prepare to be gripped, dear viewers, by a true crime story that will shatter your heart and challenge your sense of justice. In the shadows of a seemingly ordinary family lies a tale of unimaginable trauma, betrayal, and a desperate act of retribution. Bridget Harris, a young woman who endured years of unspeakable abuse at the hands of her father. Eric took matters into her own hands on a fateful night in 2007. What drove a daughter to commit such a drastic act against the man who was supposed to protect her? Was this a cold-blooded murder or a desperate cry to protect others from her pain? This haunting case from Staten Island, New York, will leave you questioning where the line between victim and perpetrator lies. Before we dive into this gut-wrenching saga, I need your support to keep these stories alive. A staggering 80% of viewers watch without subscribing. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on notifications. It's free and fuels our mission to uncover truths like Bridget's. Join our true crime community now, and let's unravel the chilling story of Bridget Harris together. Our story begins with Eric and Lucy, a couple who fled the turmoil of Liberia to chase the American dream in the early 1980s, settling in Staten Island, New York. They welcomed their daughter Bridget on June 6, 1981. Eric, a driven entrepreneur, built a small empire with an import-export business, a record store, and a travel agency, working tirelessly to provide for his growing family. Lucy, who had 2 children from a previous marriage, bore 4 more with Eric, including Bridget. But beneath the surface of their bustling household, cracks were forming. Eric, consumed by suspicion, claimed Bridget wasn't his, accusing Lucy of infidelity and refusing to accept her as his own. By the time Bridget was a toddler, Eric abandoned the family for another woman, leaving Lucy to raise 6 children alone in a foreign land. Lucy fought to keep her family afloat, but tragedy struck in 1983 when her grandmother passed away. Returning to Liberia for the funeral, Lucy was barred from re-entering the U.S., leaving her children in a cycle of foster care. The siblings bounced between homes until Eric, now remarried, took them back. But his new wife grew resentful, and when Eric returned to Liberia for work in 1990, she filed for divorce. The children were sent to live with Eric's mother and siblings on Rose Island, a place Bridget later described as a house of horrors. Her grandmother, a cold and cruel figure, treated the siblings like servants, forcing them to work tirelessly while their cousins were spared. Punishments were brutal beatings for the smallest mistakes. Bridget felt the sting of being unloved and unwanted. In February 1994, the siblings reunited with Lucy in Liberia, hoping for the warmth of a mother's love. But their joy was short-lived. Within 2 weeks, Lucy's neglect became clear. She ignored her children, leaving them with relatives in a war-torn country grappling with economic collapse. For Bridget and her siblings, Liberia was a culture shock, a far cry from their American upbringing. As US citizens, they were sent back to the States, once again shuffled between relatives. By 2007, Bridget, now 24, had carved out a semblance of stability. Living in a women's shelter, she landed a job as a security guard at an airport. Finding pride in her independence, she had cut contact with Eric, determined to leave her painful past behind. But a call from her father, now back in the U.S. and in failing health, threatened to unravel her hard-won peace. Eric, living with Bridget's sister Carlin in Staten Island, wanted to reconnect. Carlin, believing their father had changed, urged Bridget to reconcile. But Bridget knew a dark truth Carlin couldn't fully grasp. Eric had sexually abused her starting at age 3. A trauma that continued into her teenage years, growing more violent with time. Bridget had confided in Lucy and a pastor as a child, but both dismissed her, urging silence to protect the family's image. Carlin insisted Eric wanted to apologize, inviting Bridget to a family dinner on July 28, 2007. Reluctantly, Bridget agreed, hoping for closure. But seeing Eric at Carlin's home, playfully bouncing his niece on his knee in a way that echoed her own abuse, ignited a fire in her. She confronted Carlin, demanding the children be sent to safety in Liberia. Eric and Carlin dismissed her concerns, insisting he was just a sick old man who wouldn't harm his grandchildren. Furious and desperate to protect her niece, Bridget researched online and stumbled upon a case of a woman who castrated her abusive husband. Inspired, she devised a plan. She invited Eric to her apartment for dinner, intending to confront him and demand an apology. Over the meal, she asked, "Do you remember what you did to me when I was 3?" Eric denied it, claiming she was too young to remember and accusing her of lying. As she recounted abuses at ages 4 and beyond, he deflected with excuses, insisting such dynamics were normal between fathers and daughters. When Bridget vowed to keep her niece away from him, Eric grew belligerent, lunging at her. In a flash, she sprayed him with pepper spray, and as they struggled, he collapsed. Unconscious, panicked, but resolute, Bridget found handcuffs in her apartment, binding Eric's wrists. As he stirred, struggling to breathe and screaming, she stuffed a towel in his mouth, securing it with duct tape, leaving gaps for air. Driven by years of suppressed rage, she attempted to castrate him with scissors, but they failed. Grabbing a sharper tool, she completed the act, knowing that if doctors found the organ, they might reattach it. In a surreal moment, she burned it in her stove, the acrid smell snapping her back to reality. She pulled the organ from the flames, wrapped it in a towel, and fled, calling 911 to report the incident before heading to a nearby creek to dispose of the evidence. Police and paramedics arrived at Bridget's apartment, but it was too late. Eric had suffocated, the towel slipping to block his nose during his struggle. His death was ruled asphyxiation, not the castration. 2 notes were found. One reading, "He ruined my life," and another, "I used to blame myself, but now I know it wasn't my fault." Bridget called Carlin, confessing her actions. Carlin, horrified, urged her not to turn herself in, fearing they'd lose each other forever. In a haze of guilt and trauma, Bridget attempted to harm herself by cutting her wrists. Carlin found her, called paramedics, and Bridget was hospitalized, then transferred to a psychiatric facility for 3 days. Upon release, Carlin hired a lawyer and Bridget gave a public interview revealing the years of abuse she and her sister endured. A crowdfunding campaign raised funds for her defense, and a prominent attorney took her case pro bono. But her family, including Lucy and relatives, defended Eric, denying the abuse. On August 16, 2007, Bridget faced charges of second-degree murder and first-degree manslaughter. In her defense, she insisted Eric's death was an accident she meant to punish, not kill, inspired by the online case. She acted to protect her niece, believing Carlin's denial put the child at risk. On September 30, 2009, a jury convicted her of second-degree manslaughter, with one juror stating, "None of us thought she deserved a murder charge." 7 jurors wrote to the judge, pleading for leniency. But Bridget was sentenced to 15 years. She was released on parole on August 13, 2012, after serving 5 years. After prison, Bridget channeled her pain into purpose. Working with domestic violence prevention organizations and homeless support programs, her story is a raw exploration of trauma, vengeance, and redemption. Was her act justified, or did she cross a line? Should her family have supported her, or were they complicit in her suffering? Share your thoughts below. If this story gripped you, like, comment, and subscribe with notifications on for more heart-wrenching true crime tales. Let's keep the conversation alive. Stay safe, and see you in the next video.